Path of Exile 2 is extremely fun, but boy is it also really large and complex. I've already put together my ultimate beginner's guide video, link to that down below if you haven't seen it yet, by the way. But today we're doing something a little bit different. Whereas the beginner's guide is meant to give you a base understanding of how the game works, today's video is designed to give additional tips and tricks to make playing the game itself easier, more of a best practices kind of thing. Starting off with number 1, turn this loot setting on. There's a buttload of enemies to kill in Path 2. And because enemy density is really high, they're bound to drop a lot of loot, which you don't really want to miss. You see right there, if I wasn't paying attention and had the eyes of a hawk, I could completely miss this uncut skill gem on the ground. By default, you have to either hover over the loot on the ground to see what it is, or hold down the Alt key to see all loot currently laying on the floor if you're playing on mouse and keyboard. I have the awareness level of a loaf of bread and happen to find that very annoying. So pause the game, go into options, then the interface tab and scroll down to the gameplay section and turn on the setting always highlight. Now in the game, loot on the ground will always be shown to you, so you're much less likely to miss something important because you didn't see it to begin with. And while we're in the options menu, tip number 2, turn this health setting on. You can see enemies' health in game by hovering over them, but I find the following settings make things way easier for me. Pause the game, go to options, go to the interface tab, then check the following if they aren't checked already. Show mini life bar above you, and also change the drop down under show mini life bar above NPCs to allies and enemies. Things should be a little bit different now. You'll be able to see your health and mana bar directly above your character, which can help you keep track of it a little bit better without having to look down into the corners of your HUD during combat. And also you'll now see mini life bars above every enemy, which can be handy if you're fighting a ton of enemies at one time, which happens a lot. You'll get a better idea of how close to death each one is. Tip number 3, hoard, socketed, and quality loot. Now that your settings will auto show you the description of all loot that drops on the floor in combat, be on the lookout for this. That tiny little symbol that kind of looks like a square right next to the loot text. That symbol indicates that this is socketed gear, aka the loot has a socketed slot, and you can put a rune into that gear if you wanted to. Now you're not hoarding this because you intend to wear it. You're bound to find a bunch of socketed gear that just isn't good at all. But you should take any and all socketed gear you don't want back to town and head on over to the salvage bench. Every town has one. Breaking these items down at the salvage bench will give you an artificer's shard. Collect 10 of those and you'll get a free artificer's orb, which you can then use to add a rune socket to any piece of armor or weapon. In the same way, you should also be on the lookout for any gear with any amount of quality on it. Always look for quality gear and hoard as much as you can. And again, when you head back to the salvage bench, breaking down random quality gear that you find will give you things like armor or scrap, blacksmith's whetstone, or arcanist etcher. Basically items that you can apply directly to your own gear, which will improve its quality, aka make it slightly better overall. Every bump in quality will be tiny, but making your gear 3 or 4% better really can go a long way, especially in certain boss fights where you feel you might need all the help you can get. Side note, that Act 3 Venom boss can really kiss all of my ass. Time out though. There's a good chance that one of you out there watching today's video hasn't finished their Christmas shopping yet, even though we're well into December. Well, fear not, you little procrastinating Peter, because today's video is brought to you by Manscaped. Not sure what to get your hard to shop for brother or possibly way too hairy father? Give him the gift that any guy can appreciate, the Chairman Pro package from Manscaped. This all-in-one set includes everything you need for a perfect shave every time. The Chairman Pro features a 360-degree contouring head and comes with 2 interchangeable skin-safe blade heads. You've got the skin-safe 4-blade foil for a super close shave and the skin-safe stubble trimmer if you want more of a rugged look. And of course, you know it's waterproof for those of you out there who like to shave in the shower for easier cleanup. The package also comes with Power Shave Gel to get the ultimate wet shave experience, then finish it all off with the Face Shave Soother aftershave to hydrate your skin and soothe any post-shave irritation. Don't wait, finish that holiday shopping right now by heading over to manscaped.com/falloutplays and get 20% off your order plus free shipping. Again, head to manscaped.com/falloutplays for 20% off your order and free shipping. Thank you, Manscaped. All right, we back. Tip number 4, check vendors before leveling up. Now that you have 2 specific types of loot to look out for when grinding that you can take back to a salvage bench, why don't we talk about vendors in town town real quick. Vendors in each town sell gear, which potentially can include gear that is either socketed or quality gear, both of which you can just directly buy and take to a salvage bench. If you haven't checked the local vendors in a while and noticed that you're close to leveling up, which you can tell how close you are by looking at that horizontal golden meter at the bottom of your HUD, it's a good idea to stop what you're doing and head to each town real quick to check vendor inventory. The reason why is because every vendor's inventory will completely reset every time you level up. If you hit up vendors before leveling up, you can grab any socketed or quality gear you might have missed and take it to the salvage bench real quick for a breakdown. Tip number 5, hold down Alt to read what gear does. On controller, I believe you can do the same thing by pressing the right joystick in. In a nutshell though, if you're confused about what a keyword in Path 2 means or just want a little bit more info in general, by holding down Alt on your keyboard, you can then hover over key descriptive terms in your inventory to learn more about exactly what they do. The more you know. Tip number 6, how to organize your stash. The deeper you get into Path 2, the more loot you're gonna get, and if you don't take time to organize it, your stash is gonna look like a cluttered nightmare sooner rather than later. I don't think it's quite getting to the level of my Destiny 2 vault, but I'm well on the way. So it's time to organize. Now you don't have to do this, so don't freak out. I'm about to say a forbidden gaming word, but if you want to, you can open the microtransaction store and head down to the sales tab. The game offers several different ways for you to upgrade and better organize your stash, all at the cost of in-game currency, which I know kind of bleh and annoying, but the good news is that if you paid for the early access version of the game, you should already have some of this currency laying around. I had 300 of it, so I bought a few things to stay better organized. Again, you really don't have to do this, but it does help for sure. With this new orb tab I have, I can send orbs and shards directly to that tab automatically. If I open up my inventory and hit Control and left click on any orb or shard, bam, it automatically gets sent right to my orb and shard tab in the stash, going exactly where it needs to go. You can technically do this on any regular tab by right-clicking the tab and assigning it an affinity. Then by doing the Control left-click trick, you can send it automatically to any tab based on what kind of loot it is. Even with that option though, I kinda like manually organizing my stash in my own way. Now I'm sure it isn't as optimal as it could be, but at the end of the day, the only person who really needs to know where everything in my stash is me. Same thing for you. As long as you know where your stuff is, organize it however the hell you want. Tip number 7, trade with mysterious strangers worldwide. I'm sure most of, if not all of you know that you can trade with other players in the game, which isn't really that hard to do. But there's also an official Path of Exile 2 trading website, pathofexile.com/trade2. That'll be what you can use to trade, not just with locals in your party, but with a wide number of players across the entire game. You can use this site to find items you might find useful, which is shockingly easy to do. You can use the filter feature to look for exact weapon types, exact levels of rarity, even a minimum or maximum level requirement. The site will tell you the name of the player listing the item up for sale, as well as what they're looking for in exchange. If you have any items you wish to sell, using the trade site would also be an incredibly easy way to get that taken care of. Tip number 8, hit the hidden skill arrow. When inspecting your list of skills, take note of this tiny arrow over here next to the DPS number. For controller players, I believe you can access this by picking skill options. Clicking on that tiny arrow will open a second window off to the side, which has more key info regarding that skill. Info like critical hit damage bonus, resistance penetration, you name it. If you want to get really fancy with it, take note of this option down at the very bottom, used with weapon set. If you check only 1 or check only 2, you'll ensure that whenever you use this skill, you'll always use it only with weapon set number 1 or weapon set number 2 based on which number you check. I have a staff in weapon slot number 1 that buffs all my cold spell damage, so I'm going to make sure I pick weapon slot 1 here, meaning every time I use my big damage comet spell, I'm always going to switch to my cold damage staff, even if I have my other staff out at the time. In the same vein, tip number 9, take advantage of weapon set skill points. This is a repeat of something mentioned in my Ultimate Beginner Guide video, but I think it bears repeating here. Remember that because you have 2 different weapon slots, you can put points into your passive skill tree that will only turn on depending on which weapon you have out at the moment. Head on over to the top right of your passive tree and click either weapon set 1 or weapon set 2 before applying a new point to ensure it'll only be turned on when using weapon number 1 or weapon number 2. As an example, I can have a whole bunch of different passive skill tree points on when I'm using my cold staff, then switch to an entirely new skill tree if I swap to a different staff, which maybe does a different kind of damage. Worth being aware of for sure, depending on your build. Tip number 10, find and kill every boss. Next time you're looking at the map of the world at large, be sure to take a mental note of all the random icons that appear. These are side quests and area bosses. You may notice that some of these icons are colored a little bit differently. A grayed out icon like so means that you've already killed that particular area boss. An icon where the skull is more bone colored though means that is an area boss you have yet to find and kill. Believe me, I know it can be really tempting to try and speed run through the entire game and focus only on the main quest, but finding and killing these random bosses is extremely important. Not only do they drop decent loot, but many of them give super valuable and unique rewards. Things like granting additional passive skill points, permanent resist to a particular element, or a permanent boost to spirit. Even if you have to backtrack and go to an act you've already completed just to find and kill a random boss that you left alive, trust it's going to be worth it. Tip number 11, you can reset areas for farming if you wish. If you've already completely cleared an area on your map that you want to go through and farm again for more drops, remember that you can completely reset the area if you want to. Go to a waypoint, hover over the desired area on your map, then hit the control key before clicking. On controller, this should be holding down the A button if you have an Xbox controller, or I'm assuming the X button on a PlayStation controller. Anyway, reset the area and run it back. I've found there's a few bosses you can find and farm pretty easily on repeat. One, for example, would be in the Sandswept Marsh area in Act 3. If you leave that starting area and just hug the leftmost edge of the map, you should find that local area boss fairly quickly. If you look for more than 2 minutes and you don't find that boss almost right away, just go back to the starting area and try hugging the other wall in the other direction. One way will lead you to success, and again, the boss should appear almost right away. I've gotten extra quality loot drops from using this method, which again, I can take back to a salvage bench. I've even gotten a piece of unique loot to drop. Try it out if you're in a farming kind of mood. Tip number 12, don't limit your gem cutting. When activating an uncut support gem, the game will show you available options that you can use to customize each individual skill you have equipped. But apparently those are just recommended options. You can literally head right to the bottommost tab and click the option for all gems to check every support gem option you really have at your disposal. You can view support gems by color, aka their corresponding stat, red for strength, green for dexterity, and blue for intelligence, or you can type in keywords if you want. I'm playing a sorceress featuring cold damage, so I just type in the keyword cold and found some interesting options that I might have missed had I not gone looking for them. Poke around and look at all your options. Finally, tip number 13, if you can, try to save exalted and regular orbs for when you really need them. I know in my beginner's guide I said play however you want, and that still is true. At the end of the day, as long as you're having fun, it's really all that matters, right? That being said, many shards and their corresponding orbs in Path 2 are really valuable, and if you want to make the game easier, I would say to hoard them in your stash until you really need them. Let's say you're having trouble with a boss who's sticking it to you good, and trust me, that is a very regular occurrence in Path 2, good lord. If you've saved a good amount of strong orbs, well, now you can upgrade your gear and give yourself that little extra oomph you might need to finally kick a boss right in the ass. If you have any additional tips or tricks, let me know what they are down in the comment section, because y'all know me.
I love to learn.
Be sure to like today's video if it helped you in any way so others can find it easily as well. Thank you very much for watching. Peace.